Welcome to this recorded session regarding topical module choices on the National Survey of Student Engagement. I'm Jillian Kinzie, the Associate Director, and I want to lead you through some work that we've been doing as part of our Customizing NSSE series to help users better make use of their topical module results in particular. So I want to lead you through some ideas here. This is really considered pre-work to the actual act of selecting your module as part of the interface, NSSE interface, and the customization options that are required of all participating institutions. So this is really designed to help you understand what we have learned from users over the past in terms of their choices and some resources that we've set up to facilitate your choice. So let me get right into it. So this is about making choices, and assessment by its very nature involves a lot of choices. How often are you going to do assessments? Are they going to involve all students or a purposeful sample? Is it going to be a homegrown survey or a national survey? How are you going to share results? Always a series of choices. And the choices that are made affects all of these things, namely how results get used. So we want to make good choices at the front end about what we're assessing and who we're involving in some of those decisions. Assessment, as I said, involves lots of choices, and there are many influences on those choices, including kind of the standard issue, parts of every higher education institution, accreditation, strategic planning, how we're thinking about our mission and its achievement of the mission, perhaps some student success initiatives on our campus that are concerning, a whole raft of possible influences, in addition to just periodic reviews of how well our institution is performing. There are also people who influence assessment choices. The most notable are those that are working in the assessment field, the professionals in assessment, but oftentimes it could be people who are working in other units, student affairs or faculty or the provost's office, or perhaps there are initiatives on your campus that are really demanding assessment attention. So lots of rationale or reasons for choosing. And NSSE, by its very nature, involves a lot of choices. So, for example, one of the first choices that institutions have to make very early on is setting up their messaging and who will be the signature on the invitation to students. Or maybe you're trying to decide about an incentive, and if yes, what type? Or maybe you're trying to decide about the open-ended question option that we offer schools. Well, it does involve a lot of choices, and one of the big ones that we've been trying to explore a little bit more are topical modules. So every year on NSSE, institutions are afforded the opportunity to make a choice about up to 2 topical modules. And here are the current topical modules that are offered beginning in 2025, and institutions could choose up to 2 of them. Now, there are 13 options here. So we were really curious about how institutions choose their topical modules. So we actually decided to undertake an exploration project about this choice. We reached out to a purposeful sample of past institutions that elected one of the, at the time, 11 modules. So we wanted to explore a little bit about their choices, why they made those choices, and what influenced their choice. So let me just begin with the what. So what modules are they choosing? And here it just gives you some sense of the choices that these participating institutions made just by topic. So a little bit of a popularity contest in some ways, which modules were most popular. And you can see the top 3 indicated here: inclusiveness and cultural diversity, career and workforce, and advising. And these popular topics might suggest some current emphases in higher education trends. And of course, it could just reflect, or I hope it reflects, what institutions are concerned about measuring. Now, we can look at how institutions make choices all the time, and I invite you to think about how you might consider not only your own choices and the history of the choices your institution has made, but also what other institutions have chosen. So if you have a dedicated peer group, you might want to search using our Search NSSE's institution participation history to see what topical modules other institutions have elected. So if you're a part of a system, or maybe there's a regular group that you compare yourself to, you might want to see what are they doing, just out of curiosity to inform your own decision. You can search by topical module specifically, even if, okay, you just want to see, all right, who used the advising module recently, or who used the civic engagement module recently. You can actually use that same search to search for both institutions or the topical modules. So this might help you think a little bit more about institutions. And in fact, we learned that institutions that were using, that responded to our topical module exploration project were searching and trying to understand what were peer institutions doing, what were others who took advantage of these modules doing. So this is one resource and one approach to making a choice, is what did we do historically? What are our peer institutions doing? And who has historically chosen particular modules? So we also have been keeping track in a more general way what customization options institutions have elected. And if you go to our customizations options that is indicated, the URL is indicated at the top of this slide, you can actually see some dashboard information about customizations, recent customizations. And if you look, this is what will actually show on that dashboard display, this bubble display, and it'll illustrate of the module options that we have, how many institutions have elected them. Again, you can get the same information via the search function, although it will indicate the specific institution, but here you can get an aggregate sense of which modules are most popular. In this case, academic advising has been deployed at 450 institutions, career and workforce at 308. So you can search for this on each of the modules, again, giving you a sense of how popular are these modules. That might influence your choice. Now, the other influence on our users' choices is who is involved in selecting. So who specifically on a campus is involved in making a choice about topical modules. So we asked institutions based on roles who they rely on to influence their topical module choice. So top of the list, assessment staff, IR office staff, the provost, and then a variety of vice presidents. And in the other, there were also specific titles, mostly at higher level leadership. Now you can get a sense of the remainder of the options that we afforded institutions. I will note the 0 that's afforded to students there. Nobody was involving students in their topical module choices. That might give us pause to think about. But I think, you know, the topical modules definitely suggest audiences. So considering in advance who might be interested in these topics based on the topics themselves is a really important exercise. So this could be something that you might sit down with other staff to say, you know, we have a lot of options. Are there people on our campus who are currently interested in these topics, or is there an initiative on our campus in a department or perhaps a committee's effort that might benefit from these results? I really want to encourage giving pause and taking some time to think about this. The users that, again, responded to our inquiry about this indicated that they did take some time to involve other people in their choices. So I invite you to do that same thoughtful reflection on who might be interested in these topics at your own campus. So we've covered the kind of which modules are popular and how to discover what other institutions are doing. We can think about who on a campus might be interested in this. The other way to approach it is, are there particular influences on topical module choices? When we went out and asked our institutions about this, we gave a forced choice of about 25 different influences on that. And you can see some of the results for those opportunities. We chose to just display some of the most popular ones here. By the largest margin, the largest proportion of institutions were interested in student success improvements as driving and or influencing their topical module choice. That wanting to make some improvement drove the choices that they made. The next are perhaps are institution level assessments. These might be things that the institution is trying to demonstrate in terms of its own institutional learning outcomes, or perhaps some mission fulfillment. University level strategic plan is another popular influence on choice. And initiatives for improving equity also at the top of the list. And then very specifically accreditation, but you can see that it drops to more than about half. We allowed people to make multiple choices here, so there is a good variety of choices. So you might think about what might drive your choices on your own campus. Is there an initiative, a strategic initiative that might influence your choices? Now, just to recap some of the top 3 influences: student success initiatives, number 1, improving educational quality, another strong influence, and then those university level strategic planning and institutional mission kind of influences. The lowest influences were statewide strategic planning efforts, governing boards and strategic planning efforts associated with governing boards, and leadership shifts. And this means essentially a new leader came in and said, we're going to focus on X, and we need to build up our assessment protocol for that. So that didn't happen very often. So these were influences. And again, I invite you to think about what influences might be driving some of the topical module choices at your institution. We also provided an open-ended response to the module exploration project that we undertook, and we saw a couple of other things that people wrote in, mostly, again, the specific initiative that were driving their choice of modules, maybe some trends on campus for either concerns that were happening on their campus or near future projects. So perhaps one specifically mentioned academic advising, that there was an expectation that that would undergo some scrutiny and perhaps some revision. So having advising results might help this near future project. Strategic planning, again, reiterated. Quality enhancement plan, that's very specific to the Southern Association accreditation requirements. The big one I want to mention here, though, is people said that some of their choices were completely based on responses to requests. So people who said, we really ought to know more about X, got some influence, had some influence on the choices. Cost was also a factor from choosing a second module. There is a charge associated with a second module. The first module is a part of the registration fee, but a second module costs. We do require a cost on this because we want people to be reflective, to not just choose a module just because it's free. We want you to be thoughtful about that choice because of concerns for survey length. Now, we also asked schools why they did not choose a module, and I want to relate this to the last comment I just made. So there are reasons why institutions do not choose a module, either one or a second module. And when we invited people who did not make a choice about a module to tell us why, here are a couple of their concerns. One was they were overly concerned about survey length and didn't want to add. Some were unfamiliar with the module options, hence why we're doing this series on customizing. We're also noting that in some just missed the deadline and didn't make a choice, and then it got to be too late to add something. The other reason is that they discovered that there were more interest in topics that we didn't have modules for. So it didn't make any of the modules weren't appealing to them. Another one is really wanting to strengthen that connection between a module choice and strategic plans, but they simply didn't have the time to do it. So you can see how being thoughtful at the front end might help tie a module use to strategic planning, and then hopefully data use on once you receive the results. So lots of implications for your own choice that I hope this has prompted you to think about. And the first is to remind you about reviewing, doing a little historical archiving to understand what has influenced your past choices. Have you had some success? Was there a model or an approach that actually led to some use of results? And might you think about how that should influence your future choices or your current choices? There might be some time to do some environmental scanning? What issues are top of mind, or are you anticipating at your campus that could help inform a choice of topical module? Again, thinking about how the data might be used might be really important to consider. Are there some issues that are bubbling up that we might feed data via our topical modules? Then thinking about maybe who you might want to develop some friendships or some allies with, to invite them to be involved in a topical module choice. Maybe you suspect there's a unit on campus that's trying to make some changes around advising, or trying to make changes in the first year program or in senior capstone projects. Maybe involving them in the choice might help them influence what your institution chooses. Then there might be some other concerns to think about and just consider whether this is the right time to administer a particular module, if there are certain issues going on the climate that might make some topical modules simply not the right time to do something. So lots of considerations and implications for your choice that I hope you'll think about. We do have a resource that might help you think about them, specifically around the who might be interested in the topics that modules are. We developed the campus-wide mapping resource for institutions where we map the NSSE items and engagement indicators and the high-impact practices with more than 60 common campus units, departments, committees, offices. So you can actually use this resource to say, if I were to, for example, be interested in career planning services, what NSSE items relate to that? Well, you can look at the items and the engagement indicators, but we've also mapped our topical modules to these same units. So on the right are the units that we've mapped each of the topical modules to. So that might give you even more, perhaps some clues or some ideas, or to stimulate some of your thinking about who might be interested in these topical module results. So this might be a resource for you. Again, this is on our campus mapping resource guide. That's available to all users. So I hope this helps you think about your choices, and that will help drive some good choices about your topical modules. Thanks very much for joining me today.